Hello, dear tea friends from around the world. Welcome to a new tea class with me, Stéphane Erler, the founder of the TeaMasters blog and the T-Masters.com tea boutique. Today, we will do another lesson about puerh, and this time we'll do a tasting of not just one, but two samples in order to answer the question, what is gushu puerh? How to recognize gushu puerh with our eyes, with our nose, and especially with our taste. Before we start, I want to let you know that my new postcards for this year are ready. Thanks to your votes on the best 12 pictures of 2025. You chose the harvest in Longfonxia. Very nice. Harvest of a spring oolong in the high mountain of Longfonxia in Shaanxi, and also this chashi on Japanese chabu that is quite, and you can see it shines. I use a special coating to make it more shiny because it's. I wanted really to emphasize the light on this picture that made it really so special, so great. So thank you very much. Now, for people who already have the previous postcards, if you make your order, you are going to receive this postcard. If you have not the 5 sets from the last 5 years, then you will first start with the set from 5 years ago. Today's lesson is going to be very, very, very important. I cannot stress it enough. Actually, this is maybe the most important lesson, and we're not just going to make experiment to taste the difference between gushu and plantation puerh. We're even doing this with an old gushu and old plantation puerh, 20 years old roughly. The plantation puerh I'm going to taste is Bajiao Ting. I give you a sample of 20 grams. In the sampler, the puerh sampler for these classes, it's if you have not purchased it yet, it's in the T-Masters.com boutique under samplers. So Bajiao Ting, and the other one is the 2003 Iwu wild puerh. And for both these teas, I've measured only 2 grams. We are evening. We're in the evening. I don't want to have a sleepless night. So, and this is going to be enough to taste the difference. So as I promised Terry, we are going to drink these puerhs on more on the light side, almost as if they were oolongs. For oolong in the competition, they use 3 grams for 6 minutes. We're only using 2 grams, which also is a way of showing how powerful puerh is. Why is it so such a fascinating tea? Because it can contain so many flavors. Now, on my, I'll also give you some time to prepare your tea. You can see my piece of this puerh is almost in one piece. So what I'm going to do now is very, very slowly unflake it and flake it and make each leaf come off the trunk. Since it's from 2005, 21 years old, they come off quite easily. And this also starts to give you an idea of the strength of these leaves. Yeah? We want to better understand the strength of plantation puerh. So this is going to be also part of the things that you want to learn when you touch the tea, how it feels, how brittle it feels. But of course, if you only have plantation puerh, then it's not much of an, you still don't know how to compare it. That's why the other sample is so important. because it is 100% wild gushu puerh. Now, uh, now I realize I did not even explain what is gushu puerh. This is Chinese to you, and actually it is Chinese. Gushu means old tree. In the description of this 2003 EU puerh, actually I did not use gushu. At that time, it was called Yesheng, which means born in the wild puerh. So why these different names? Well, that's sometimes a question of marketing and what is the better word. In all cases, we really can make a difference between plantation trees that are grown like bushes, like a bit like these oolong bushes in oolong trees in Sanxia or in Shaanxi. They never grow higher than the size of a human, so that they are easier to be harvested. In the case of Yesheng, Gushu, Old Arbor, Wild, all these names, uh, the trees actually grow higher, much higher. They can be 3, 5, 10, 20, 30 meters high, and then they need to be harvested using ladders or by climbing on it or by installing complex system of ladders all around, almost like on the construction site. I also want to do this on this EU puerh. So this is really how we want to make the difference between these two types of trees, those that remain small and those that grow high and old. Why is this so important in terms of difference in quality? One of the reasons is because when the trees grow tall, they also develop deeper roots, and these deeper roots help to get access to water that is far below the surface. It also gets access to better filtered water, better filtered nutrients that go in the soil. Let's also first, before we start to brew these teas, preheat the gaiwan. Okay, what else can we say about these teas now that we have flaked them nicely? The leaves seem a little bit darker and larger from this plantation puerh, actually smaller on the plantation puerh, and especially in terms of buds, I do have here a very large bud on my EU, but only smaller buds from the plantation puerh. Oh, yeah, really very small compared to this large bud. There are other buds that are not that large, but this shows that in theory, what you also get is larger leaves and larger buds when the trees are older and larger compared to bushes. With bushes, leaves usually a bit smaller. This is an information for reference because it's also possible to pick the leaves more mature, and in that case, they can appear larger even though they are plantation. So it's not 100% way of discriminating and recognizing plantation from old arbor, but it is a general rule that that can apply in many cases. Okay, these leaves here also appear a bit harder on the old tree, I would say, than from the plantation one. In terms of feel, they feel more robust, a bit thicker. Now let's go on and empty the water. Let's brew these two teas. So only 2 grams. This afternoon I used 2.5. It was fun also, but for me in the evening 2 should be enough. See if, yeah. On the side in order to make the leaves swirl. But you may also smell them before, but since they are a bit old, you will see that the smell are quite similar. And what makes this comparison really interesting is that both teas I have stored in my apartment almost right after they were pressed. So this one in 2004, this in 2005 even. So for over 20 years, these 2 teas were in my apartment in Taiwan, which is one of the environments that is considered as the best for aging puerh, because Taiwan has a higher temperature during the year and also higher moisture level. However, this is not it's because it's in my apartment in a room that sometimes gets air condition when it's really too hot. So it is not the most extreme, the most moist environment that you may find, but still this would be considered a dry storage in Taiwan, and I believe quite good compared to the most of the western regions where it's cooler on average and quite dry. So prepare, we do a pretty long brew since I only am using 2 grams. Okay. What else can we say? Well, we are almost done here with the brew. You may give me also already a thumbs up for the class to let more people know about this information about puerh. Oh, it's really warm. And yeah. Iced morning for Terry. Okay. Here you go. The plantation and the old tree. Oops. It's late. My hand is a bit slippery. Sorry for that. And it's really extremely hot. Sorry for this little mishap, but it's quite interesting. We see a bit a darker color for the plantation puerh, which is a bit surprising because it is slightly younger, 2 years younger than the old arbor, and in theory we think that it should have less power than the old arbor because the roots are more shallow. So interesting to see the color is a bit different from what we were thinking we would expect. Huh? This is the thing that shows that tea is always a bit unpredictable. And even though the color of the leaves was on the darker side for the older tree than on the plantation part. Now let's, I think we can see that. I've chosen a black background. This is the same background as used in tea competitions because it offers the highest contrast. It's very neutral. There's no I would say because it's only one color, so you are not distracted by any other color. And we see it's light orange here, a little bit darker orange for the plantation. We may also use our porcelain spoon to smell. So this is a pretty standard 20-year-old sheng puerh, raw puerh smell. Forgot to mention it's raw, but should be obvious. It will be more obvious when we make the class about the difference between sheng and show, raw and cooked. Here, actually, you will notice some differences, but you also see lots of things that are similar in terms of aroma for these two teas. Now, let's taste. I'm starting with the plantation. And now let's compare it with this old tree. Again, I give you time to make your own tasting, make yourself some mental notes on what you are tasting before I give you my tasting notes. Here, I think the difference is more apparent. I would say it was more obvious with 2.5 than with 2 grams, but should be enough if you are. And also now in the evening, my taste buds are not as awake as yours in the morning or in the afternoon. This might also actually pretty good taste, but this one is definitely better. It has more thickness. It has it fills the mouth much better. The whole palate is coated with this tea, and it feels kind of sweet. It also makes you salivate much more than the others. The other one has bitter and a soury note. This bitterness is almost gone here, and what you have much more is a natural sweetness, even though we did not add any sugar, and especially this coating, this thickness of the taste is what is, I think, for me, the biggest difference between Old Arbor and Plantation Puerh. We will see this characteristic with other old tree puers in my sampler in the following lessons. And what is interesting, of course, is here we have one example that is only plantation, and this one is only wild or old arbor, old tree. The quality of old tree can vary depending on how old the tree is, depending also on the region where it is grown. Some regions have better soils than others, better drainage for the soil. And so that's why there are different tastes in Iwu, Banzang, or Lansang, as we are going to explore in the coming weeks. Uh, in the During the CNNP era from 1950 to 2000, the puers were mixed. They would mix plantation with gushu material. We don't, thanks to these recipes, we don't know the exact composition. Sometimes it's a bit more, sometimes a bit less. Actually, in what really happened is that as time went by, it was less and less gushu, less and less old arbor, and more plantation that was added in the mix. So it's only after the monopoly stopped that we had these pure old tree puerh that started to appear after the year 2000. And so this is one of the earlier examples, one of the puers that that started my tea journey. That's also why I wanted to start this lesson with this one, so that we can see how it has evolved and how, yeah, now when it's a bit cooler, the bitterness comes up more here, and the smoothness, the purity of the tea with the sweetness is more obvious now also with this old tree puerh from EU 2003, both spring, and so both aged in my apartment, which also now gives us the answer. Are all puerh, do they all have the same potential for aging? Here we see clearly no. This one has evolved into a much more powerful, harmonious, long-lasting, full-bodied tea, whereas this one still has the bitterness and sour notes. It's not, of course, it's not bad if, depending on what you are drinking most of the time, if you are used to drinking lots of plantation puerh, young plantation puerh, this might feel an improvement about, compared to them. But the most potential for perfection, for purity and power, really lies with these old tree puers. That's why the collectors are really focusing on this type of puers, and where the quantity, when the supply is very limited, because you need to avoid at least 100 years for a tree to qualify as old, whereas plantation puer, you can plant new trees and in 3 years you already can harvest them. So it's much faster to increase the supply of plantation puer than of old tree puer. Of course, old tree puer, there are differences in quality due to the regions, due to how they are managed by the farmers who own them, take care of them, depending on the weather, depending on the season. We use spring, which is the most refined season. So it does not necessarily mean that an old tree puer will always be superior to a plantation puer. There can be, you can also make bad tea with old tree material, and a very good one with plantation puer, but the potential here is limited. Here, the potential is the sky is the limit only. So, which tea did you like? If you if you have not tasted yet, maybe, and if you are yeah, if you like a little bit stronger, maybe you can use 2.5 grams. Otherwise, if you want to be on the safe side, if you are more used to drinking lighter teas, 2 grams should be enough already to taste the difference of character between plantation and old arbor tree. These teas, of course, can continue to be brewed several times more. Let me see if you have any questions so far. Uh, Terry smells camphor in both samples. Yes, I think this shows that there are some common notes. These are both raw puer that are roughly the same age, 21, 23 years old. So it's normal and aged in the same environment. It's normal that they should have lots of common notes. And Terry also says the plantation is definitely more bitter than old arbor. But it's not just the bitterness that is important, it's also the thickness of the taste and the coating on in the mouth. This is what will be a common characteristic with other old tree puer, uh, this thickness of taste. Some old uh, trees puer can also have a bitter note, uh, but if they are well done, this bitter note helps to also to make more powerful aftertaste, and it will transform into something sweet and comfortable. Here we don't have so much of this transformation. The EU in this regard is much nicer and thicker. I've been wanting to learn a bit about the difference between gushu and plantation puer. Thank you. Great. I'm glad that you could learn something today. Actually, I think this is really one of the fundamental classes because there's such a price difference also between plantation and gushu. You don't want to pay the gushu old tree puer price if you are getting only plantation puer. And now you also have a better understanding of the aging, how these two types of puers evolve after 20 years in very good conditions, but on the dry side. Uh, we are going to do some more lessons about aging and different environments. And we'll also do a lesson, I think, next week about the difference between sheng and shopur. This is also a very fundamental difference to know. But the difference between plantation and old tree puer is also is already a fundamental uh, thing to learn. I hope that you have enjoyed at least this tea. The other one, don't be too mad. I give it for free for the purpose of this class. So was it really would it have been worth $20 because this is the price I saw online. This one actually is worth much more. Maybe you don't think it's worse if you are used to drinking other teas, but thanks to the power, you can continue to brew it. I really feel that it has. It's not completely crazy to give such a high, to spend so much on such kind of pour. Okay, I'm starting to Yeah, be tired. Thank you very much. It's 10:30 here in Taiwan in the evening. One more comment from Elizabeth. On the larger market, I've noticed that more and more puerh tea is labeled old tree and wonder if it is always true. Yeah, of course, there are lots of fake old trees, puers. That's why it is important to uh, teach yourself to recognize the taste of old trees. So no matter the specific notes of EU compared to other uh, regions, what is important is this thickness. Great. Thank you very much for your viewing. See you next week for another tea class. Bye bye. And I really like these pictures. Thank you.